Hello and welcome. My name is Mark Horseman, data evangelist with DATAVERSITY. Thank you for joining the latest in the monthly webinar series, Data Architecture Strategies with Donna Burbank and special guest Nigel Turner. Today, Nigel will be discussed. Oh my gosh. Today, Donna and Nigel will be discussing data quality best practices, and we have a sponsor in Reltio today. A couple of points to get us started. Due to the large number of people that attend these sessions, you will be muted during the webinar. For questions, we will be collecting them by the Q&A panel. And if you'd like to chat with us or chat with each other, we certainly encourage you to do so. And just to note, the chat defaults to send to just the panelists, but you may absolutely switch that to network with everyone. To open the chat and the Q&A panels, you'll find the icons for those features in the bottom middle of your screen. As always, we will send a follow-up email within a couple of business days containing links to the slides, a recording of this session, and any additional information requested throughout the webinar. And now I would love to pass it over to our friend Gino from Reltio for a brief word from our sponsor. Gino, take it away, my friend.
Thank you so much. Let's see if I can actually successfully share here. And there we go.
I see
Hi,
your
everyone.
slides. They look wonderful.
I'm sorry.
Your slides look wonderful.
Perfect. Thank you very much. My name is Gino Fortunato. I have been in the data unification space since long before I had gray hair and long before we called it data unification. We called it customer data integration, but way back in the day. And I would just like to take a second to shout out to Donna for the wonderful work that she's done over the years doing these webinars. I know they've been very helpful to me over the years. At Reltio, we have a data unification solution that we think really fits in well with the topic today. Because when we think of data quality and data quality issues, we think of really these 5 principles to make the success that you can have in this space more sustainable. And the first one, I almost feel like I'm preaching to the choir on this one, but I have to tell you, there's a tear in my eye every time I hear somebody, a prospect, talk to me and said, well, we just had this huge data cleanup project 6 months ago, and our data is still not where we want it to be. And I think to myself, wow, that's really the wrong approach. You really need to be doing something proactive on a continuous basis if you're going to want to do that. And the reason why that is true is that your data is being updated on a continuous basis. So a one-time data project is always going to leave you out of date. People in governance are critical to the trust of what you're doing. And what I mean by that is think about it from your own perspective. If some initiative happens in the government, in your organization, in your social circle, with people that you're not intimately familiar with, or that you're not really aware of, and somebody just surprises you with the end result and says, "We've done this," you can be sure that everybody's response is going to be, "Well, why did you do it that way?" And so bringing people into that process is critical, and governance is the way to do that. And what I mean by governance is getting some at least uh, loose agreement on how to approach the problem and how to communicate the results to the rest of the organization. Most of these data quality problems are cross-functional, right? Sales is the one inputting the data into Salesforce or Dynamics, right? The operations people, the warehouse people are the ones entering data into the ERP, right? So that data is flowing throughout the organization, and people need to understand that it has multi-purpose. It's not just so the widget gets shipped. It's so that somebody is looking at the forecast and making sure that they understand that the data can be used for that purpose too. And those sustainable improvements require data backbone with automation. And the automation is really key. And this is where we think RelTO really helps, because that automation, that continuous data unification and cleansing data quality engine is exactly what we've built. And our founder did it in a way that's unique. He built a purpose-built solution, not just taking a off-the-shelf architecture. And data quality is not just about risk, it's about readiness. And particularly in an agentic world that we're headed for, the agents are going to be really useful in the future when they but if people can't trust the data, they're not going to be as nearly as useful. And the winners in this agentic world are going to be the ones that can let the agents do the work. At Reltio, we have a consolidation approach where we take the data from all those systems, bring it to the Reltio data cloud, and then make that useful in agentic AI. We think it's really useful to push that data back to the applications that where the frontline users are doing it. And of course, analytics or digital automation. This is really what we're all about as an organization. This particular slide is a little bit focused on insurance, but we have equivalents in financial services and healthcare, life sciences, B2B, B2C organizations, and we've done a lot of uh, innovation here. Like I said, we have a data unification architecture that is built on NoSQL, Graph, Elastic, and we were the innovators of all of this in this space, and we've been doing it in the cloud as a native SaaS application since day one. And our customers get lots and lots of business value out of this, specifically in the areas of growth, efficiency, and risk and compliance. And these are the main areas that we focus on. So every customer that we talk to, we talk about what their goals are as business and making sure that we can help them achieve those goals. That's really what we do at Reltio is help people get better outcomes. And with that, I'd like to pass it back over to Mark.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that brief introduction, Gino. Very well done. And let me introduce the speakers of our monthly series, Donna and Nigel. Donna is recognized. Oh my gosh, I can't read today, Donna. Donna is a recognized industry expert in information management with over 20 years of experience in helping organizations enrich their business opportunities through data and information. She is currently the managing director of Global Data Strategy Limited, where she assists organizations around the globe in driving value from their data. She has worked with dozens of Fortune 500 companies worldwide in the Americas, Europe, Asia, and Africa, and speaks regularly at industry conferences. She has co-authored several books on data management and is a regular contributor to industry publications. Nigel has worked in information management and related areas for over 25 years. This experience has em- embraced data governance, information strategy, data quality, master data management, and business intelligence. He is currently principal consultant for the EMEA region at a Global Data Strategy Limited. He is well-known thought leader in information management and has chaired, run tutorials and seminars and presented at many international conferences. He is also he has also designed and run data governance training events for government, universities, and other organizations. He's very active in professional data management organization and is an elected Data Management Association UK committee member. He was the joint winner of DAMA International's 2015 Community Award for the work he initiated and led in setting up a monitoring scheme in the UK where experienced DAMA professionals coach and support newer data management professionals. He is based in Cardiff, Wales of the United Kingdom. And with that, I'm sure you're all tired of me speaking at this point and messing up my script and tripping over my words, but I'll pass it over to the professionals in Donna and Nigel. Donna, please take it away.
All right, thank you so much, and thanks everyone for joining. Good to see some familiar names on the list. We have some common joiners, which is always great. So if this is your first time on the webinar, it is a regular monthly webinar. DataVersity does a great job of recording and keeping all of the historical webinars. So if any of those topics earlier from this year look interesting to you and you've thought, oh shucks, I missed it, it is both on the DataVersity website, and we also do a link to that on our own website, Global Data Strategy. So you'll see some good info there. And if any of the future webinars coming up this year are of interest to you, please do join us. Next month is on architecture, metadata management. Data modeling is always near and dear to my heart. So, but you joined for the topic at hand, which is data quality. I think Gino did a really great job kind of introducing, and great minds think alike, I think of, really, we can talk about data quality, we can talk about data quality automation, but really it's the impact on direct business operations. And by business operations, it's both operational data, reporting data, AI, agentic data, all of that. I think we'll talk a lot in the webinar about this idea of a holistic approach. Is when what Nigel and I, or what I always try to do in the webinars, if you've joined them, and what Nigel and I try to do as well in these presentations is make it real. I mean, we do this day to day. We run a consultancy, full disclosure, and we run into these issues and we solve them all the time with great success. What makes data quality challenging is not that it's difficult, but it's a bunch of simple things all put together, and that holistic approach between it's the people, it's the process, it's the technology and automation. But if you take out one piece of that stool, things are going to fall over. So that can seem overwhelming, but what we'll do, as we always do in these webinars, is try to break it down into a structured approach to hopefully get some quick wins out of this, because, as Gino said, it is ongoing, but you can keep going and continuing to get benefit as you go, rather than feeling like you have to boil the ocean all at once. So I'm sure we're all familiar with some of the drivers for improved data quality. You're probably all on this webinar because you're looking at one or many of these. And the main one up top, and why it's up top, is business performance, right? The data quality, and once the organization has that link, that this will make everything much more successful. That data is the engine that drives the business, right? And many of you who might be saying, "Oh, I'm not getting buy-in from the business with governance," or as soon as you make that link, and you might go to someone and say, you're a data steward for finance. And they'll say, "Oh, I don't have time for that." Well, doesn't IT run that? Well, great. Well, IT is going to set the payment terms on your contract, right? Well, hey, no way. That's my job. Exactly. And that's data. So if you want that data correct, or, sales might say, doesn't IT manage data? You're like, great. So I'm going to put all the notes and the contact information about your customers, right? No, that's my customer. Don't touch my customer data. Exactly, right? Because data, whether that connection is made yet or not, once the business gets that we have clean data to drive customer campaigns, or we have clean product information to, make sure our supply chain is working smoothly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We'll talk more about that, but making that link is as important as actually fixing the data, because you need to really celebrate these successes and really show the business that you help business operations. It wasn't just this techie IT thing behind the scenes. Avoiding risk, we can all get, things like GDPR is a big one, or California Privacy Act. If you're in a regulated industry, you really need to have that clean data. Just going through these quickly because I think you understand. Customer and stakeholder satisfaction. Gosh, a lot of what we're trying to do is get the data right to solve these customer service issues. And then, we'll talk more about how data quality really supports a lot of the other things we're doing in data. You can't have good AI. You can't have good data, business intelligence reporting. Basically anything else you're doing with data it really has that underpinning of data quality. And Nigel will talk a whole lot at the end about specifically AI, because that's top of mind. I mean, we've been doing data quality and for years, but I think, and Gino mentioned that as well, the spotlight is on us now. If you're going to automate things with agents, then you got to make sure the data is right, or we're going to make algorithmic decisions on people's lives. Let's make sure that customer data is right. So let's jump right into it. You may have seen this type of framework before. I show it fairly often on these webinars. This is our kind of data strategy framework we use. And one thing I like about it is that it really shows the intersection of all the pieces we talk about. That, at the top, it really is driven by business strategy. That's why we're cleaning data quality, because we need it for business operations. I'm geeky enough to think that data quality resolution in of itself is fun, but most people don't, right? And we have other things to do with our lives. We're not doing this as an academic exercise, right? And without that data governance and collaboration with the people and the culture of continuous excellence with data, the data quality is going to be difficult. And then, as I talked about before, data quality, it doesn't live in a vacuum. It both enables these other touch points, it enables better master data management. It also is an underpinning of master data management. And we can start to talk in circles about this, but everything, on those bottom three rows really are intertwined, and they support each other, which is a great segue into the data management body of knowledge. As was mentioned in the introduction, both Nigel and I are very active, and I know many folks in the call are as well, with the DAMA or DAMA organization. And this is their wheel. And you'll see that data quality is a key hub of that wheel. And similarly, this shows that, kind of those touch points with data quality, with everything else in this wheel. Data governance is at the center of this. Data quality could be at the center as well, right? That it really is an enabler for everything else that you're trying to do with data. So one of the definitions of data quality, rather than get overly academic on this as well, this is one that Nigel came up with, is that it's data that is demonstrably fit for purpose. And I think we're data management people. We like our definitions, right? Put this in a glossary. So what do we mean by demonstrably, right? It shows that you can both measure the data quality itself. We'll talk about that, your good old-fashioned data profiling. But what some of us in the data world forget is that we also need to measure the business impact of that. And we'll talk more about this, but you don't just say, hey, we have 52 million empty email addresses. Well, so what, right? Well, that's going to affect our marketing campaigns, or that's going to, that our customers can't log in without an email on our new digital web app or something, right? You're not just doing this for numbers, you're doing this to show business value. And then fit for purpose. What do we mean by that? Is that not all data has to be 100% perfect or good, and what perfect or good means is different perhaps for every group, right? So that's why we need to both prioritize for business drivers, but also have a collaborative voice from the business. And we'll talk more about this as well, but that to me is what's really interesting about data quality. It's like you're on a scavenger hunt and you see something strange in the data, and someone will say, oh, that's because we use this field for this, and it goes down a whole rabbit hole of business need that we didn't realize, right? So fit for purpose. If it's your critical data elements around your customers, that's probably needs to be high data quality. If you're just doing some exploratory analytics on social media trends, it doesn't have to be and will not be as high quality as maybe somebody's medical records, right? So really understanding that and focusing on the right things in the right way is key to the message we're sharing today. So a little bit more on fit for purpose, and I kind of talked through this already, is that it doesn't mean that it's always 100% right. You have certain thresholds. You could spend the rest of your life trying to get everything perfect, and it's not the right goal. The real goal is to really make sure you're focusing on the right data to have the highest business impact, that has the right rules for those business needs, right? So, and we'll get into a little more nuance of what that means. So, this is what, really makes data quality challenging. This is my point earlier. If I can choke myself here. The data quality in and of itself, nothing about it is particularly complicated. It's a bunch of simple things put together, right? And when anything gets cross-functional in an organization, or there's many moving pieces, that's where things get complicated. So, sorry, it's a people problem that a person at the end of the day is putting data in the system. A person is using that system. A person has maybe created these inherent business rules around this data, right? There's a business process that is putting that data in or using that data, or stepping over somebody else's data. So really understanding how business process affects data quality. And then as Gino mentioned too, technology, I'm not going to say that data quality is only a technology fix. What the last thing I would say is just point a tool to your, and even Gino from the tool world didn't say that, right? You don't just point a tool to your data quality and expect it magically to clean things up and then you're done. It's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing process that evolves with the business. However, you do need technology at the end of the day. You don't want people going in and manually cleaning up hundreds of millions of customer records, and you want to automate those rules. And that's where it's a discovery process, both top down in terms of business rules, and then bottom up. What is the data telling you? And again, once you learn to embrace finding this fun, you'll love data quality, right? Because I feel like it's a scavenger hunt or an archaeological dig of, you'll hear things from the business that'll apply business rules. And then you look at the data, and you folks all probably have stories you'll put in the chat, which is, oh, you look at a strange data type and we'll talk about data profiling in a bit, and then you'll see, wow, I see this one date that's like January 30, January 7th, 1929. Oh, right. That's the field we put in when we needed the, customer onboarding date, but we didn't get that for a few weeks. We put that in as a placeholder. Then no one ever went back, and there's something strange. Or I was just working with a client this week and they had only two genders in their system, male or female. And then there was unknown. And people are saying, well, why would there be unknown? You're either male or female in this particular business rule. And saying, oh, well, that's for our prenatal department. It might be, folks that are pregnant and they have a baby on the way. We don't know the gender yet. And they said, well, maybe this is a whole different business process we do for prenatal. And it just was a whole business discussion that started with how do we better support our pregnant moms that are part of our membership community, right? It started with a data profiling exercise, right? Or we did this with a financial services group that thought that their high net worth individuals were all a certain age, and when they looked at it, there was a lot younger high net worth, and they thought the dates were wrong until we looked at the data and thought about it in the business context. And it wasn't that the data that was wrong, we just had a misaligned business rule, right? So you'll go in these cycles, and it shouldn't feel like a spinning circle, but it's an ongoing discovery process, and that's what I find fascinating. And it's never the same in any organization. And you really need to. I had one client who used to always say it's the 5 whys, and always ask, never make an assumption. Something as simple as what a gender is, what a date is, what a region is, everything probably has an embedded business rule. So don't just look at the profiling and make an assumption. You really want to delve into the business, and you'll often get the business people, if you're a technical person, really involved and engaged because you're talking about their day job and it's affecting their business. So Nigel and GDS put together, but this was, Nigel's brainchild initially, was this idea of an A to E approach, which is how do that cycle that I mentioned on the previous slides, how do you sort of automate that in a ongoing process, ongoing best practice? So the first is understanding the business usage, and that should be obvious. I see a lot of folks skipping that step and jumping right to the tech and profiling the data and writing some rules with not ever stopping to think about how are we using this data? What's the impact of fixing this data? Who's using it and why, right? So really focusing on that task is a first order thing. And then baseline, and definitely look at the data. What are you seeing? What's empty? What seems to be out of range? And then the next one is that you start to converge on that top down and bottom up that I mentioned of what do we think is most critical? What is the data telling us that's most critical? What are the rules around that? And you start to get that. That's really where you're starting to get that convergence of what the true business rules are aligned with what the business is telling you. And then don't end there. And I know Nigel has stories on this as well. I mean, we've seen it all. Nigel and I have both probably been doing this for 30 years now. And we see folks do that, and they build the dashboard and they say, great, your email address is 50% empty. There we go. And we sort of forget to develop a plan to fix it and then ongoing monitor it. And so, we had one high profile client that actually in their data quality dashboard had a data improvement plan and steps to fix each element with a data steward's name or department's name on it. That it wasn't enough to just say, hey, your emails are empty or your date's out of range. It was, and these are the steps you need to take to fix it. And then here's how we monitor it over time to get it back on track, right? It's like going to the doctor and saying you're sick. What do I do? Well, I don't know. I just tell you you're sick. We don't procure, we don't have a plan. Same thing with data. You really need to have that improvement. And then the other thing we often forget, because a lot of us in the call are builders and architects and engineers, we're on to fixing the next thing. But are we continuously monitoring not only the data quality, but the benefit that has on the business? So that, great, we fixed these data email addresses. I'm just picking an obvious one. And then as a result, look at how much more click-throughs we got on our email campaigns because people are actually opening it because we have the correct emails and they're valid. And there we can make an assumption that we close this much more business, or et cetera, et cetera. We're not mailing things to people with physical mail that don't arrive to their houses and things like that. A bit of a call out because I saw him log in. One of our top consultants, Scott Garner, is on the call, and he put a great blog out recently on this very topic on our website on how, if you feel, it was more about data governance, but is related to this, you feel like your data governance is stalling. you're not showing the ROI, and he's got some cool steps of how to get to that. So hopefully that's a free blog. I'm not selling anything. It just it was a good call out because kind of resonated with some of the things he said in that blog. So take a look at that, or reach out to him. He'll send it to you. So the first thing is assess, and we've got templates on this. In our consultancy, it doesn't probably not anything rocket science. It's just a nice stepwise approach, and you can do the same thing, right? So often we can get overwhelmed. I just say go through each of these steps, write it down on the whiteboard. Think of some 1 to 5 things you can do in your organization around this. So what is the business landscape? What are those things? And if you don't know, gosh, we do this again. We're a little more open to do that. We're consultants. We can kind of go on site and ask the questions of, hey, what are your issues? But you can do that with your colleagues as well. And you may be surprised. Often we in the IT side, I don't want to go talk to the business. They're going to think, we have found you just ask about data and they come up for air in about an hour. And then here's another thing, or prompt that way. We just had with one client, a data governance meeting, and it sort of started out that way of, hey, how can we help? And what are those things that drive you crazy with data quality right now? And again, we had to cut off the conversation after an hour of, oh, what about this? And the drop down fields for the state codes don't have Canadian provinces, and how the heck can we sell to our Canadian customers without the province codes, right? So all of this stuff you will hear, right? And that's going to help you prioritize of what are you'll start to see themes, because people don't work in a vacuum, and supply chain might have the same product issues that product development has, that sales has, right? So and that's, maybe if you're in a support role around this, just start to, quantify those and start to make some of that business case. Sometimes you'll need a full ROI of your return on investment with actual financial numbers. Sometimes it's just that storytelling. Whatever it is that's driving everyone crazy is probably driving the sponsors crazy too, or even saying, hey, we talk to everyone across sales, marketing, supply chain, and they're all frustrated by the fact that we've multiple SKUs for the same product, or we don't have weights and measures to ship out our information. And you'll find those issues if you don't know them already. You might just be nodding your head. You're like, yeah, Don, I got a list of these already, right? Then you're ahead of the game. That's a good thing. You have something to solve. So then you do want a baseline. You don't just want to storytell, right? And that, again, that's what's hard about quality. It's a bit of everything, right? So you want to have some things you can quantify, and this can be helpful too. So that client I was just mentioning, that in this particular company, they only have 2 values for gender or biological gender. It's M and it's F. It's not male and it's not female. It's just the letter M and the letter F. And they're trying to, and that affects a lot of things, how they, it's an insurance type company, so that, how do I cover my members? Do I have pregnancy coverage? A lot depends on the gender. And they sounded kind of crazy till they went and they did some data profiling. I think there was 32 values. One was the number 7, that I don't know what that means. And so bringing some of that to management and saying, do you realize or do you realize that we have this much empty? Or, I guess you probably are all telling stories amongst yourselves of, I guess there was one, it was customer data, and the client had it was like 76 versions of the client AT&T, AT&T, American Telegraph and Telephone. I can't even imagine that there were 76, but there were. One had a period, one didn't. And so sometimes showing this, and that's where data profiling can really help. You have actual values and frequency distributions. That's where often you find of, how come everyone's putting in January 1st, 2000 in the data? And they're, oh, that's that weird business rule. Or, what is it? We see a lot of strange values here, and it really gives you some specifics. Then you don't just do that in a vacuum either. And this, again, is kind of that cyclical approach. Out of those, which is the critical data elements? Right. So what are the business drivers? I don't know. We have a big customer campaign. It's probably customer. And I don't want to only talk about customer and product. I know it could be student, it could be patient, it could be citizen, it could be, I don't know, whatever your business is. I just use customer and product because everyone can relate to that. But I've seen it all. We had, one client that had outsourced some of their data quality, and the big report that the, consultancy sent back is that all their fax numbers were empty. And they said, great, who's used fax number for the past 10 years, right? And it didn't take into account their business. However, I will always say, ask the 5 wise, right? Because, why is this? Well, why is it empty? Should it be empty? Is it empty everywhere? We're working for a large multinational company, and we critical data elements. We had the customer data. We did our due diligence with fax number, and we said, of course we wouldn't put fax number in here, and who uses that anymore? And one region said, we do. In fact, it's a requirement because we have remote people, and the only way they can send the data in is they fax it in. We do. And so don't make the assumption that people don't use the fax, right? It's a question. And that's where this gets a little either fun or frustrating, right? Which is, what's the data we should focus on? What does the data actually look like? And what business rules would go around that? So one is just identifying which you don't want to be profiling and focusing on a million things. What are the top 10 things we're going to focus on for this particular business case? That's where this idea of a critical data element or a CDE, and so if you're a data modeler or data architect, those are kind of your attributes or your fields or your columns, whatever you want to call it. It kind of shows that not everything is equal and not everything is the same. And so don't make assumptions. Here's some on the right that are kind of common: first name, family name, date of birth, the phone number. Fax number isn't. Favorite ice cream, probably not. Maybe interest, unless you're the ice cream company on the call. You're like, Donna, that is a critical data element for us because that's the most important thing we need to know about so it's not the same thing for every company, but that's why you need to understand what is our business. What are those top things? Is there PII or personal identifiable information that really is more critical to our business than the other things? Right. Once you do that, you want to develop the business rules around that. And again, this is another thing that's simple but has nuance. It isn't just, is it right? What do we mean by right? Is it complete? Is it consistent? That, maybe it's M and F in one and male and female in another, and it's the same value. It's just not consistent. Neither one is particularly wrong. You just need to pick one because those don't match, right? Or does it conform to certain standards? Is it unique? Gosh, you're probably all on this call because and why folks like Reltio are in business. How many people don't have duplicate customers, duplicate patients, duplicate product numbers, duplicate SKUs for the same product? All of that is a simple problem to identify, but there's a lot of complexity in kind of solving that, right? Is it timely? Do I get the data in time? Is this I've had, gosh, we've seen it all. We've had major companies launch a product with the old product name. We've sent emails or letters to customers at their old address. That's a correct address. It's not my address now, right? Is it reasonable? The date 11111 is a date, but that's probably not the right birth dates for your customers, et cetera, et cetera. So, we could do a whole webinar just on the different, dimensions of data quality. And do we pick these? Do we pick others? Again, I don't worry so much about what are the proper, dimensions to use. These are the ones we typically use, but start to go through examples and kind of using these as buckets. I often in a workshop will say that. What are the issues you have around uniqueness? What are things that are out of range, that they're valid values, but they're just not reasonable? Or, email of Mickey Mouse at no name, goaway.com or something, that kind of thing, that can help get some standards here. And then I'll pass it over to Nigel soon, but I guess, that's kind of the funnel. And I always think of, data quality as the funnel and sort of funneling on business value. And then the iterative, loop of you funnel into a small thing, you show success, you show business value, and then on to the next. And if you're a good architect, you're architecting these in a way that they all build together. You're not just willy-nilly going after these quick wins. Especially if you're doing it with the data management mindset. Okay, we're focusing on customer, but then that links with location and that links with product. So by the time we build up all these quick wins, we really truly do have an enterprise approach, and we've delivered value along the way. And anyone has a better way to describe this, I want to talk to you, because I think a lot of people think quick wins is a throwaway. It's absolutely not. It's a step along the journey. It's a first building block of your foundation that shows value. And often gets that light bulb to go off with the business of, this is why we're doing this. Thank you. I want more. So I'm going to pass it over to Nigel, will bring you along the rest of how you bring it through business value. And then we'll delve into a little bit onto AI. So over to you, Nigel.
Okay, thank you, Donna, and nice to meet you all virtually from the wonderful world of Wales, where I'm currently sitting. We're great believers in global data strategy and in the importance of quick wins, because you can analyze data quality until the sun comes down and back up again many times. But what's really important to make the impact with the business is actually to deliver something of value that you can then demonstrate to the business has improved the performance of that business, and therefore get their support for then expanding that out into other areas of the organization. And so, how do you develop these quick wins? Well, I mean, one of the things we would always say is the first thing to do is really to create a working group to actually tackle the problem. And remembering what, very much what Gino and Donna have both stressed so far, in order to fix a data quality problem, you have to think holistically about the solution. So that means you need people from the business involved. You need people from IT involved, because between them, they've got different perspectives on what the problems with the data are and how best to fix it. And of course, the business can do things like change a business process if that process is actually creating poor data. IT can fix a problem if a field is being truncated, for example, within a particular database when it's moved from one data source to another. So you need that sort of multi-skill team. If you're talking about personal data, for example, and a problem with that, you might also want to involve someone like the data protection officer, because they'll be in a good position to highlight what the risks are if you don't fix those particular problems. And then once you put that team together jointly, then that team starts to analyze what is causing that data quality problem. And I will bet you, and Donna, I think, will bet you that every single data quality problem that we've come across, and I've come across more than I've had hot dinners, every problem has an element of people, an element of process, and an element of technology in it. And therefore, if you're going to fix it, you won't fix it purely by throwing technology at it. You won't fix it generally by changing a business process. You need to do all these three things and align them. And then once you've sorted out what the causes of the problem are, you're in a good position then to suggest some actions you can take. And on the people side, it might be simple things like re-educating or educating, in some cases for the first time, data entry staff who make some fairly, basic mistakes when they enter data into a particular screen. Or it could be tweak the technology a bit to stop it truncating data when it comes in, and things like that. But those things have to all join up. But the one key action as well, going back to what Donna was saying, is that, you need to understand what are those critical data elements that you really want to focus on. Because I think critical data elements remind me a lot of Pareto's principle, which is that very often when you look at data quality problems, 20% of the data fields cause 80% of the problems. So if you really want to fix data quality and improve it, focus on those 20% or 30%, whatever it happens to be in any particular case, that are the key to getting things fixed. And yeah, one of the things we'd always recommend, an early activity for any working group to do, try to work on a quick win or a more strategic data quality project, is create this thing we call the foundational data quality dashboard. And it's based on the principle of the oldest cliche that I've ever learned in data quality, which is you can't manage what you can't measure. And therefore measure the data as part of that baseline exercise that Donna talked about. Create a dashboard then to monitor that. And as the project progresses and you start to make improvements, you can then track what the impact of those improvements are. And you'll see there at the bottom the importance of what Donna was saying about data quality dimensions. You can actually then track the improvement in things like the completeness of the data and the accuracy of the data as well. Does the data reflect the real world or not? And then, therefore, this is, for us anyway, a very essential first step when you're developing any data quality improvement. So once you've delivered the data quality improvements and these through a series of quick wins, then you're in that evaluation phase that Donna touched on. And really what you're trying to do here, very much what Donna was talking about, which is that what you don't want to do is for every data quality improvement project just to be a data cleanse, because a data cleanse is really what we would call, and what Larry English used to call, a cost of failure, because it means that you have to repeat it and keep repeating it. What you're trying to do is part of your solution is to think, how can we stop this problem happening again? And how can we continuously monitor the data and stop, for example, bad data getting into the system, new data getting into the system, and causing future problems? And then, of course, if you've got a data governance structure in place, then you need some of those continuous improvement activities to be owned by data owners and and or data stewards. If you don't have data governance, we find that developing and delivering quick wins is a very good way of convincing an organization that they need data governance, because people will inevitably say, this has all gone horribly wrong. We spent a lot of time and effort fixing it. How do we stop it happening again? Well, why doesn't somebody own the data? Why doesn't somebody have responsibility for making sure that data doesn't get bad again and is monitoring the quality of it on a continuous basis? And then that means, therefore, as well, you can then monitor the financial and business benefits, which is why you need to do the first stage, because without the assessment phase, you really don't know if that's going to happen or not. And then the other thing as well, back to the dashboard idea again, once you've built that foundational dashboard, then clearly when you're doing the evaluation of how successful your changes have been, you can then use the same dashboard basically to monitor improvement and, produce at least, could be weekly, could be monthly, could even be quarterly reports on what the trends are in the data quality that you're actually looking at. And, trends are really important, because you may find, for example, the improvements that you made are showing month on month an improvement. And then you suddenly hit the month of October and data quality suddenly dips. And therefore, that gives then an ideal opportunity to say, why has that happened? And you do some investigations and you discover, for example, that somebody in IT somewhere has changed the size of a field, for example. And all of a sudden, that field doesn't conform to the business rules that you've developed. So you need to basically create or adapt business rules to make sure that you can do that. And of course, if you can show the improvements in this way, it addresses what Donna said earlier about the so what. So, what are the business benefits that we've delivered as a result of improving the quality of the data? So you have to be able to relate your measures to business outcomes. Now, that may not always be possible to do that financially, but you can certainly say, our customer data duplications are reduced by 32% since we introduced this project. This means that people in the business don't waste time trying to find all the contact records for one customer, because we know that those duplicate records have been eliminated, so they only have to look in one place. That has a time saving, and therefore that by definition in any business has a cost saving. So that's really basically what we suggest the A to E approach should be. But before I hand back to Donna, I suppose we've got to talk about the topic that's pretty much on everybody's lips at the moment, which is our favorite topic of artificial intelligence. So what impact is artificial intelligence likely to have on some of the stuff that we've been talking about? And I think this graphic, I don't know about you, I find it quite scary. So it's a little bit sort of dystopian, I think, in terms of what the future might be. But hopefully, the future, I think, could be like that if we don't address data quality as a fundamental and integral part of any application or any introduction of AI. And yes, AI has got lots of great opportunities. And next slide, Donna, if you like, the opportunities you see there. It's incredible how quickly this market is actually growing at the moment. This year, I checked this morning, the market is worth around about £371 billion, $1 billion, sorry. And by 2032, the estimate is it'll be somewhere around $1 trillion. So there's a lot of money to be made in this stuff if you get it right. And, that is then encouraging, as you can see on the top right, 18,000 startups looking at generative AI were created last year. And it's even more this year, I suspect. So a lot of people are now entering the field. But, this whole AI revolution has also got its risks. And this little quote by Gartner on the bottom left there, which you came across recently, they estimate, or they predict, that a third of all Gen AI projects will fail this year. And the main cause of failure will be, guess what? Poor data quality. It wasn't the only cause, but it was the single biggest cause that Gartner are coming across when they talk to their clients and their customers. There are other things as well, like the usual things you get with any project, I guess, like lack of control of costs and unclear business cases. But certainly data quality is the number one barrier. And I quite like this quote from a US tech journalist that I read recently. And we all forget sometimes that the AI, yes, is an incredibly powerful tool, but it is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or bad purposes. and everybody accepts AI as huge potential for organizations, society. But if you've got data sets which are biased and are full of rubbish, then garbage in, garbage out applies more to AI almost than it ever has done. And that's saying something, given us, those of us who've been around in this field a lot. And that was just re-emphasized by a piece of research we came across as well recently from BARC. On the next slide, Donna, and that's, yeah, thanks. And this is, they surveyed 360 companies in March of this year. And you can see there that the main obstacle that they have in managing data ready to use AI is, surprise, surprise, data quality and lineage. So 47%, 45% of all the respondents cited data quality, data lineage as the #1 issue they've got, and the #1 barrier to them successfully implementing AI. So I think the basic message that comes across from this really strongly is that if you don't tackle data quality problems with as much investment, vigor, and money potentially as AI, then disaster is likely to strike, and probably will strike. Just like people who invested in business intelligence, for example, or data warehouses, and didn't think about the importance of data quality when they did that. They wasted an awful lot of money, and the same could happen now. So how does A2E then fit in with potentially an AI project? Because one thing I suppose it is worth stressing is that many organizations now are beginning to create AI use cases. They're treading, I think, wisely with some caution. So they are trying various AI applications using agentic AI or whatever, just to see what the outcome of that is. And therefore, they are good quick wins potentially for people like us who are interested in data quality to actually get actively involved in. And, you know, I've just there replicated, if you like, there are many different AI project development methodologies. I think this is just one of the simpler ones that we've come across, you know, where you have a 6-stage process, which is like A2E iterative. You know, you define the opportunity or the problem, you start to collect some data, use that data to train your AI model, and then you evaluate it in a limited setting. Once you think that your algorithms are working correctly, then you deploy it, you operationalize it, and then you monitor its performance. And then, you know, once you're monitoring its performance, you then go back to the beginning, and then you think again, right, how can we now refine or improve this? So if you think about that, that's very similar to what Donna was talking about in terms of A2E and the data quality stages. And what we try to do here, and this is a rough mapping, is to map where the 5 stages of A2E might actually become an integral part of an AI project methodology. So the assessment will help to define the data you actually need to deliver the use case, and it'll also give the business context in which that data is used that Donna talked about earlier. It also, of course, then you need to baseline the current state of the data when you collect it, and you start to prepare it. And of course, data quality can be a great help in making sure that the preparation of the data means that it's fit for purpose for any AI use case. And then you probably will need to converge again. So what are the CDEs that need to be right for the AI algorithms to actually work correctly and not be biased and not deliver erroneous results? So that could be helpful too. And then, of course, as you develop the AI solution, you need then also to develop and improve the data in order to train it and for the deployment. And then you're more confident in the outcomes of that. And then, of course, the evaluation phase, both. As you're evaluating the performance of the AI application, you're also evaluating the data that it's actually using and the data it's actually dependent on. So I think the two methodologies, if you like, the two approaches can come together very nicely. The important thing is that you don't do the top developments without also doing the bottom developments in parallel. Because if you do that, you're going to end up with not what I think you wished for and hoped for in your AI use cases. And, you know, where again, just another way of stressing, I think, the importance of AI. I came across this AI pyramid fairly recently, which I adapted a little bit to make it a little simpler. And what's interesting when people talk about the capabilities needed to develop any AI application, what is interesting is that if you look at those various, if you like, layers of the pyramid, the foundations that you need to build, in order to make AI effective, I would say at least the 2/3 of the capabilities are data related. So they're all about things like, getting the right pipelines in place, having the right ETL, having the right storage repositories and mechanisms, doing data cleansing and data preparation, detecting anomalous features in the data, for example. And then as you start to get into the areas of analytics and training data, you're sort of talking then the merge, if you like, the merge of AI approaches and data approaches. And data quality fits, I think, in the space of those two layers of that pyramid. So in other words, if you don't include data quality as an integral part of your AI project, then I think it's a recipe for failure, as I've said here. So AI is a very critical part of the whole AI development process. And of course, then a lot of people as well these days are talking about the importance of ethical AI. How do we make sure that any application of AI, particularly AI, agentic AI, which will make decisions on behalf of an organization, are ethical and are not prejudiced against individuals and people? And I think probably, hopefully by now, we've stressed enough that you cannot have ethical AI without ethical data. And ethical data comes from good data quality, because you're confident in that your data is a realistic view of the real world, and therefore you can trust it. So without things like trust, if you've got poor data quality in the data sets you're using in AI, you cannot rely on whatever decisions and outcomes that AI produces. And I'm sure if you just Google AI disasters, you will find that that is a very commonplace occurrence, where poor data inputs have led to poor outcomes. It must be seen, I think, by people as well to be fair. So that, for example, if you have biases in data sets and AI outcomes, then this can skew decisions and outcomes. So, for example, credit scoring. There was an AI use case I read recently in the health sector that said that the AI made assumptions that anybody classed as a nurse must be female and anybody classed as a doctor must be male. So I don't know who fed those things into it, but there must have been somebody that was born about 1902, I think. So, that was biasing, if you like. It was about recruitment in terms of favoring males as doctors over females, which is clearly wrong and unfair. And that can have a negative impact on individuals. And finally, of course, as well, when you're applying AI, it's really important that you can be transparent. Because if somebody then says, your AI has made a decision about my mortgage application, I want to understand why that application has been turned down. If you cannot be transparent, then you've got a heck of a job explaining that to the particular individual affected. And if you can't do that, you're going to end up with a lot of dissatisfied people. And of course, as well, sometimes, and particularly in some parts of the world, those dissatisfied people might decide to sue you because they will argue that there's no transparency. They don't understand the black box which this decision was made within. And therefore, they will insist on opening that up to legal challenge. So it's, in other words, it's a very big risk if you don't make these two things merge together. And then finally, the last thing I want to stress, though, as well, is that it isn't all one-way traffic. So, Donna, if you just move on to this, thanks, Donna. Just to highlight as well, not only is data quality a very important and critical enabler of good AI and ethical AI, but AI actually as well is already beginning to help improve data quality. So the relationship here is a mutual one. And I think there are really strong synergies if you integrate your data quality improvement activities with AI. AI can actually help improve the quality of your data. So it becomes a virtuous circle of capability that you can build. And I won't go through all these now for the sake of time, but basically you can see there AI is already being used in many data quality tools and many data platforms to actually help some of these things, to help improve the validation of data capture, to automate data cleansing, etc. So in conclusion, the AI future can not necessarily be dystopian, but I think that if you understand, if organizations get to grips with the fact that good AI will depend on good data, then I think there's a chance that these new technologies and these new approaches can help everybody. And in the sake of time, Donna, I'll hand back to you.
Right. So, I mean, I think probably I saw some nodding heads and thumbs up in a lot of the issues we kind of raised. I think hopefully we offered some kind of real world practical advice for how to fix or at least think about fixing fixing these issues with both the people, process, and technology to build that foundation so you could do things like AI and machine learning as well as the good old fashioned business operations and BI and things like that. So, if you enjoyed this and weren't aware of our upcoming webinars, hopefully you can join us in October and December. Full blatant pitch, we do this for a living, and if you need help, don't hesitate to reach out to either Nigel or myself. The slides will go out with our email address, or just check out our website at globaldatastrategy.com. And with that, we will open it up to questions. So over to you, Mark.
Wow, we have some great questions in Q&A, and one of my favorites is here that I in fact teach a class on as well. But I'm very interested in everybody's opinion on this. So there are plenty of data quality tools available in the market now. How to choose the right tool? Are there any standards or parameters to evaluate them? And they appreciate any insight you could provide on this.
Well, I'll give some thought and then pass it over to the tool vendor on the call. But Nigel and I think Nigel, you say the same thing. We're a bit tool agnostic. I know probably the steps are fairly straightforward with any tool. Firstly, look at what you need. What's your business goal? Because all tools on the market are good. They're good for different scenarios. And then what might surprise people on our team, sometimes we start. What's hard with data quality is you have to often make the case for a tool with data quality, but you can't use the tool to make that case because you haven't bought it yet, right? So yeah, people might cringe, but we use old-fashioned SQL for some of this, and we'll even build a data quality dashboard in Power BI or something like that, or Tableau, or something on top of it, or even a good old spreadsheet, right? Right? Just do some initial analysis with that quick win, and then that'll teach you how, is it that you really need a good rules-based tool? Is it that you need something with some automated, high volume cleansing? But I would almost say start with a pilot without a tool, show the case, make sure you fully understand the ramifications, and then that's going to help you with kind of the criteria for what, because there's many good tools. They're often embedded with other tools like an MDM or something like that, as well as pure play data quality. But that's what we often do is just before we even talk about the tool, talk about everything else, and that'll help you pick. But I'll be curious, Gino, what your thoughts are on this one.
I think you've hit it spot on. I probably the most common data quality tools continue to be Excel and SQL, right? And that will remain as long as we have spreadsheets and we have people with the SQL command line. There are an amazing number of tools. If you look at the analysts' evaluations, there are a number of them in the highest quadrant, which I find completely amazing. It's almost like the market for tools has become commoditized, but they have their purpose and their place, right? And what we do is a little bit more than that, right? I should say a lot more than that, because that the data unification, data quality is a piece of what happens, right? And it's an important piece, but it's only a piece of it. And the unification problem is way beyond what a data quality tool does.
I think your last point, and I will let you have another question, Mark, but that's a good one in terms of it really ties in with the message we made. Like there are pure paid data quality tools, but if you're doing that, maybe SQL's fine. It's really in what context you need clean data quality, and often
Yes,
MDM, the
absolutely,
unification is an
absolutely.
issue, it's duplication and
Yeah.
things.
And
Yes, a
and
great
you know,
point.
who do you expect the user to be to make the rule, right? If,
Yep,
if you're going to use
absolutely.
SQL, then you need to have somebody who understands SQL. I think where the tools come in, most of them is they let a business analyst generate the rule versus
Yeah,
somebody who is a SQL jockey.
yeah, and have workflows to review the errors and things like that.
Exactly,
Makes a lot of
exactly.
sense. Yeah. Okay,
Sounds
Mark,
like I
what's
could get
next?
you
We have
guys
time
to
for
teach my
another?
class. Yeah, yeah. I think we have time for one more, and it's the $1 million question, which we could do a whole webinar on, and we'll see how quick we can answer this one. Do you have a preferred way of determining the cost of poor data quality?
Do you want me to have a go at
Uh,
this? Um,
Well, we do. We do have a kind of a structured approach. Reach out to us if you'd like that. I think, I think it's both anecdotal as well as ROI. But if you think generally this kind of, are we reducing cost? Are we increasing revenue? Are we dealing with risk? Or is there just kind of the reputational risk? Sometimes it's the storytelling that can help as well. But yeah, or even reach out to finance and see how they calculate ROI. But sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, Nigel. Sounds like you've got some
Oh
thoughts.
no, it's okay, Donna. I mean, I agree with all of that. Obviously, the key thing is, I think it's implied in the question, anyways. You have to measure the failure costs of bad data. You cannot say how much is good data quality worth. What you need to do is say these are the problems with our data, these are the business impacts, and therefore closing the gap between fitness for purpose and the current problems is where you make your business case, largely make your business case for data quality improvement. And whenever you can make that case in financial terms, might be things like time saved or extra number of products sold, faster income, whatever it is. You can't always do that, but sometimes then you can say things like reduces risk of PII breaches, for example, or misuse of PIIs. So the last point I'd make is that because every single data quality project that you will do is different, in some way you have to make a different case for each of those projects in order to build the business case for action.
And Gino, we'll give you the last word, buddy.
Um, I would agree with what the team has been saying here. They are spot on, and it's been a great experience to be with you all today. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Awesome.
everybody.
That's all we have time for. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Donna. Thanks, Nigel. Thanks, Gino. Wonderful as always. And thanks again. And thank you for chat for being so electric and asking so many Q&A questions.
Hey, thanks, everyone.
Thanks all. Bye.